WHO's assessment is that the risk of monkeypox is moderate globally and in all regions, except in the European region, where we assess the risk is high. There is also a clear risk of further international spread, although the risk of interference with international traffic remains low for the moment. So in short, we have an outbreak that has spread around the world rapidly through new modes of transmission about which we understand too little and which meets the criteria in the international health regulations. For all of these reasons, I have decided that the global monkeypox outbreak represents a public health emergency of international concern. Although I'm declaring a public health emergency of international concern, for the moment, this is an outbreak that's concentrated among men who have sex with men, especially those with multiple sexual partners. Stigma and discrimination can be as dangerous as any virus. But with the tools we have right now, we can stop transmission and bring this outbreak under control.
And I can't find a seconder usually when I propose this, but I don't care. I don't need a seconder. My own opinion is enough for me, and I claim the right to have it defended against any consensus, any majority, anywhere, any place, any time. And anyone who disagrees with this, pick a number, get online, and kiss my hand.
No representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed are greater than the legal services provided by other lawyers. I'm Harry Steele. You found the Backstory Podcast, number 131.
Oh, the weather outside is frightful. Delightful. For the love... 8 Lincoln 30 to dispatch.
8030, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a wild goose chase over here at Nakatomi Plaza. Everything here's okay. Over. But nobody has no place to go. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. Man, God damn it, fingers ain't Welcome to the party, pal.
Turn up the heat and it's getting ready to pop.
Welcome to the party, pal. I'm joined by my client and partner in crime, Mr. Paul Rip. How are you today, Mr. Rip?
Present, 100% accountable.
All right, so we'll get to the gist of that in a second.
Yeah.
So I wanted to start with an article that came out in the Lanyap newspaper called "Lack of Trust." Suit alleges fraud in Mabel Amos Trust Management. Do you remember that?
Absolutely.
About how Mr. Albritton supposedly got money for his children.
Correct.
So then Rob writes this editorial, Alabama's Recipe for Corruption.
Which was very good.
Which talks about the Ethics Commission, the Attorney General's office. You see where he's heading with this, right?
Right.
And the latest example is what's taken place at the Alabama State Bar over the last few years. It's
Correct.
been a real expletive show. So let's talk about what's been going on at the Alabama State Bar. Executive Director Philip McCallum resigned in October of 2020, a little over a month before he would be found guilty of 17 violations of the state ethics law.
17.
Yeah. He paid a $100,000 fine. Okay? And that's not front page news anywhere. As a matter of fact, there was only one article written about it.
It also, Harry, 6 months after he resigned, he got a check for $30,000+ that nobody's explained yet either from the bar.
So, Mr. Rip, you're aware of this because you filed a lawsuit against the Ethics Commission and asked
Correct.
them to re-review these things with Mr. Albritton not being involved because he obviously doesn't know what ethics are because of his involvement with the Mabel Amos Trust.
Right.
Okay. So here is the article, April 9th, 2021. WSFA News, the only people that covered the story. So then, I guess to sum everything up, if anybody really wants to get, down and dirty with this, go read Mr. Rip's Rip report of July 1st called Dirty Underwear. A real good example of things. So now that the Mabel Amos's family has filed a lawsuit, the Associated Press has finally written an article. Member of Alabama former Secretary of State filed lawsuit against Regions Financial Corporation.
Right, that was Mr. Thornton wrote that one, right? William Thornton.
I don't have that on my screen. So then on July 14th, the Alabama political reporter, these guys are supposed to be the insiders in Montgomery, right?
Right.
Sounds like a courtesy cover to me. They couldn't not write about it.
Well,
and do you see
look
anything,
at the title.
Do you see
I know, but
anything
look
about,
at the title, Harry.
It's all about Regions Bank.
Regions Bank. Nobody's mentioned the ethics director,
right?
Or not as much. He's the one that should be on front page.
Exactly. And who's cozier with the press than anybody in Montgomery? Yeah. So why don't you tell us? Why don't you break this down for us and tell us what you think is important? So I've covered a lot of this, but the latest article that Rob wrote this week is called "Ethical Dilemmas: State Ethics Commission Facing Issues on Several Fronts." So I thought what I would do real quick is flip over here for a second and show you this special meeting that the Alabama Ethics Commission had on July 13th.
Yeah,
and
that's mentioned in this article.
Right, and we're just going to listen into a little bit of it to give you an idea of what they're talking about.
The Office of Prosecution Services has pointed out in their response to our request for their comment that, in their opinion, the apparent conflict between the grand jury secrecy provisions referenced in 36-25-4C and the discovery provision of 36-25-4F, however, is resolved by the second paragraph of 12-26-216, which allows the state of Alabama to disclose grand jury testimony to be used for impeachment of a witness in a criminal trial, prosecution of perjury, and, relevantly, in any other matter otherwise permitted by law. The combination of the discovery required in Rule 16.1, the respondent's constitutional and due process rights as outlined in Brady, and its progeny are a manner otherwise permitted by law according to the proposed opinion C. The Office of Prosecution Services also pointed out that Attorney General Opinion 94-126 addresses a similar conflict that appeared to exist between the Department of Examiners and Public Accounts statute that also referenced the Grand Jury Secrecy Act in Section 12-26-216 and imposed a duty to have their work papers and documents peer-reviewed by outside parties. The Attorney General issued this opinion finding that the last sentence of Section 216 authorized such disclosure as it is any other manner otherwise permitted by law.
Okay, so now that you have some idea of the argument that they're hearing, let me tell you what the crux of the matter is.
All right.
The Ethics Commission in Alabama stands in the shoes of the grand jury. Okay, instead, so if you're a public official and you're accused of violating the ethics law, it goes to the Ethics Commission, and the Ethics Commission is the grand jury of sorts. They're an investigative body, right? They don't prosecute anybody. Now they can decide, like they did in Mr. McCallum's case, to handle it administratively, where he paid a fine instead of them turning him over to the Attorney General to be prosecuted. Correct?
Right.
So they do have a little bit of discretion there. But what brings us to this article and this ethical dilemma is they found that the police chief in Montgomery, Chief Ernest Finley, and the chief of operations, Jennifer Reeves, had violated the ethics laws. They turned it over to the Attorney General, And would you say he disagreed somewhat?
You want me to read what he says?
Yeah. Why don't you swing for the fences on that one?
To the extent that you found probable cause to believe that the above referenced respondents violated the Alabama Ethics Act, I believe that you so based the incomplete and misleading information as a matter of public record. I find that neither respondent Reeves nor respondent Finley engaged in any criminal conduct whatsoever, Steve Marshall wrote in a letter provided to Lanyap. He went on to write that the reports and case files used in determining Finley and Reeves violations contain material misrepresentations of facts and rely demonstrably false evidence and demonstrate violations of your general counsel's ethical obligations under the Alabama Rules of Professional Conduct. Here's what I really like. Marshall claimed the Ethics Commission's general counsel, Cynthia Ralston, and we'll get back to her in a minute, and senior investigator Brian Butler, we've never even seen an investigator, were involved in misleading the commission. And
okay, so besides that, I need to predicate this. Okay, so you heard him talking about Brady evidence. So that's Brady versus Maryland, and Brady versus Maryland is kind of like Miranda. Everybody that's in the criminal system knows what Brady evidence is, and it's anything the prosecutor has, including exculpatory evidence, and that is defined as evidence such as a statement tending to excuse, justify, or absolve the alleged fraud or guilt of a defendant. So they're having this big meeting, and everybody's arguing about whether or not the Ethics Commission falls under the Grand Jury Secrecy Act, and they just do their investigation, and they never tell the person who is accused that they have a statement from somebody or they have evidence that they didn't do it at all.
Yeah.
And so I guess what the reason for the special meeting and everybody throwing their skirts over their head, and so let's talk about the conclusion they reached. The conclusion they reached was that they have no obligation to turn over Brady or exculpatory information to someone they may know is innocent. When they turn it over to the prosecutor, either the local district attorney or the attorney general, they're claiming that monkey is on their back to meet the Brady burden at that point.
So much to be sure about transparency and everything. Well, what I liked was that, Marshall, like you said, Marshall overruled him. He said that the investigation by his office found the Ethics Commission staff violated Finley and Reeves' due process rights and did not comply with state law. Now, that's what I really like. Marshall decertified Ralston as a deputy attorney general and said he must object to her serving the commission in any legal capacity. Both Ralston and Butler remain employed with the Ethics Commission, according to this website. Ralston's title is now listed as Special Assistant to the Director. Now, here, Harry, is where, let's go back 4 or 5 months ago when I filed the complaint against Ethics and Albritton. It was Cynthia Ralston who was trying to convince me that there was no crime and everything was okay. And when I asked her,
and when you say tried to convince you, this wasn't a 30-second phone call. This was
was like 45 minutes. 45 minutes, pretty heated at times too, because I couldn't believe that she was trying to defend something that you have to remember. Some of these articles, if people go back and read them, Albritton and them are quoted. I mean, they admitted to a certain amount of stuff in these articles. It's not like they didn't do it. Of course, now we're looking at a civil trial and we're headed toward a civil trial, but that's kind of, I don't think it should have been resolved that way. I think the attorney general or ethics should have stepped up and done something. But here we are looking at a civil trial.
Now remember, one of the components to the corruption cake was a one-party system, right?
Correct. Correct.
So what do you think the political leanings of all these people are?
Protect each other's ass.
No. They're my people. They're country club Republicans, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, these aren't a bunch of Democrats or operatives like that. What I'm saying is it's incumbent upon us to clean up around our own table, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. If you can't clean up the state, you can't clean up Washington.
Certainly not. So anyway, are you? I don't know if you're done with this or not. I think it's
pretty much. I would encourage people
okay. Well,
to
let me tell you
follow
something.
it.
Let me tell you something that I thought was extraordinary that you left out.
All right.
Marshall claimed that Ethics Commission General Counsel Cynthia Ralston and Senior Investigator Byron Butler were involved in misleading the commission. Quote, the transcript of the hearing before the commission indicates that material misrepresentations of fact were made to the commission by both the general counsel and the case agent. And, of course, you stated that he stripped her of her title as assistant AG.
Right.
So do you want to hear something funny?
What?
On Wednesday, they had lobbyist training, and they stream it just like they do their other meetings.
Right.
So guess who was leading the ethics training for the lobbyist?
Albritton or Ralston would.
Both of them.
Both of them.
Right. He was going and she was going and he was going.
Oh, that's got to be, and then, of course, the last part of the article, Rob comes up and starts explaining again the Mabel Amos Trust and the Ethics Commission. Like this wasn't enough. Okay. You still have this entire Mabel Amos Charitable Trust on the side. As an additional problem going on with the executive director.
Okay, well, at this point, we know that he got money, his law partner, who's also on the board, got money, and their former law partner, who's now a judge in Connecticut County, got money, right? Well, now that a civil lawsuit's been filed and there's discovery, one of the discovery questions was, please tell us everyone you gave a scholarship to. Right. Well, I would have included and what office their father holds or mother holds. What position at the school board does their mother hold, or what position in state government does their? Or you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
I have a feeling it's going to be a who's who slush fund of the Montgomery elites, and it's going to be a bloodbath.
The other thing that got me, Harry, is that the charitable fund was supposed to be scholarships for children that had the brains but didn't have the money, so to speak. And of course, the schooling that they were to get, be it higher education or whatnot, was supposed to be in Alabama. And Mr. Albritton, on his profile, internet profile that you can find, he brags about both of his children being enrolled in the University of Texas. And indeed, that's where the scholarship money he got from Mabel Amos Trust paid for $120,000 that we know of so far, in that for his kids to go to school.
All right, so I want to back up just a little bit and play a dystopian mind game with you, okay? So we now live in a state where someone can file a fake ethics complaint against you, and they know it's not true. But they don't have to tell you that. So you're the mayor of Huntsville or where the hell ever, and you got an ethics complaint against you, and you don't know what it's about. You understand? And you and your lawyer can't be in the hearing room when testimony's going on. It's just like the grand jury. So their staff is in there spoon feeding the commission, and they go, and then depending on what spoon they're using, they're either going to say, "Oh yes, this is terrible," or they ruin somebody's careers like the police chief in Montgomery.
And from what I understand, being indicted by a grand jury is pretty simple, not hard.
I understand that, but they created this system so that it would be secretive, so that if it were deemed to be untrue, I mean, when you're a public official, people can file anything they want to against you.
Well, maybe they should be Alabama Ethics Secretively Commission.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, if they were out there indicting ham sandwiches, I would say they're abusing things. But you and I both know they do everything they can to give cover to these public officials.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So, speaking
In fact,
of,
that's what it looks like. It's a complete. The Bar Association and the Ethics Commission look like they're totally working to make sure any of the accused don't have to jump any hurdles. You know, we don't have to tell you what's wrong. We don't have to tell you this. We don't have to tell you that. But we got a complaint against you.
and you're
ethics
the executive
secrecy.
director of the Alabama State Bar. You're found guilty of 17 ethical violations, and hell, you're just off practicing. Yeah, they write a nice article about you and send you on your way with another $37,000.
And people should understand that we're talking about the executive director of the bar and the executive director of the Ethics Commission.
Let me back up. These people make more money than one of my circuit court judges, than the sheriff, than any local elected official, right? These guys are knocking down like $200,000 a year, and your judges are making about $125,000.
And they're not having to go to court that much.
Well, so let's talk about cleaning up around your own table. So the Alabama Democratic Party removed a judicial candidate from the ballot. You want to know why? Because so when you declare yourself a candidate, you have to fill out the statement of economic interest form, and apparently hers was total fiction. And
well, Nate, you know, that brings up another thing, Harry. It was Cynthia Rawson with the Ethics Commission when I confronted her about the economic statement by Mr. Albritton when he was hired for that position. And she just kind of lost her breath there for a second, and then said, well, he doesn't have to provide one.
Okay, Paul, I'm going to do another little mental exercise with you. What do we know at this point about the relationship between Albritton and Ralston? Well, they're basically best of friends because the attorney general accused her of malfeasance, and instead of firing her, he made her his special assistant.
Yeah.
Okay, so don't think that she's ever going to say Tom Albritton did something wrong. That's been established.
What a joke, man. What a friggin' joke this
They're
is.
never going to, and if you're Dr. McCallum's kid who has 17 ethical violations, do you know what would have happened to me when I was the county manager of Etowah County, if the examiners of public accounts came back and said, you know what, we found 17 ethical violations, and then the Ethics Commission found me guilty of those 17 ethical violations? Do you think I'd have been able to pay my way out of it? I'd have been stoned to death on the courthouse steps.
You'd have had to go to another state.
If that. All right, well, there are some things going on. So, you know, during the pandemic, they came up with this idea for virtual schools. So, Correct. Of course, there's 5 or 6 big corporations out there that all want to get that business, right? So These guys had a scheme where, anyway, they were caught. They entered guilty pleas. Athens.
Where was this?
Athens, Alabama. That's Lauderdale or Limestone County, one of the two. I think it's Limestone County.
Yeah.
So Athens Superintendent Trey Holliday got 5 years. Teacher Greg Corkin got 22 months, and Coach Webb Tubb got 24 months, all in federal prison.
But the ethics director and the bar director with 17 violations so far, nothing.
Yep.
Got to be on a certain part of the totem pole, baby.
Okay, so the Alabama Cannabis Commission held a meeting, and they gave further direction on what their regulations were going to be.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Are we getting anywhere?
Well, so let me tell you how dirty this mess is, okay?
Oh, God.
So they have a subcommittee that makes decisions about important stuff, and then they bring their recommendations back to the full commission, which is like 12 people, right? So anyway, when you import a marijuana seed into Alabama, there has to be a tracking number on that bag of seed. And when it's imported, you have to report it, and they track it from the seed, and you have to, like, say, I planted the seeds on such and such date, and then you send another report in that says, I plan to harvest on whenever, and then you notify them and they come out and whatever. So there is a tracking system from seed to the processor to it's been distributed, right?
Right.
So it sounds like me and you could have sat down with a damn spreadsheet and come up with a very rudimentary software tracking package, right? I mean, it doesn't sound like you need to be, you're not reinventing the wheel. There's all kinds of
It's probably available in several states.
Okay, so anyway, they decided, the subcommittee, that they were going to award the contract to this company over here in wherever, Indiana. And so one of the commissioners said, well, who made that decision? Did we do it? Well, we did RFPs, and were they the cheapest? Well, no. Well, what was the reason for choosing them? Well, that's all. The subcommittee made that decision, and we don't have to tell you why.
Oh, my God.
They said that to one of the commissioners. Okay, so there's going to be no transparency, and whoever gets these 10
contracts,
licensures it's going to mean generational wealth for their families. It's the most coveted thing the state of Alabama's ever created, except Indian bingo.
Yep. And you see when we see the 10, we'll be able to do that
it'll be just like the McSherry case where we say, y'all sit here and watch this. The Mike McMillan case, y'all sit here and watch this. And I live in a county where all this shit happens on video, and it's still not true.
The Strawman.
The Strawman case. All right, so while we're talking about marijuana down here, a long-awaited bill to legalize marijuana was introduced in the Senate. Love him or hate him, Chuck Schumer introduced this bill. It's the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act. It's been under negotiation for some time. It would remove cannabis from the controlled substances list, encourage states to create their own laws, expunge federal criminal records for nonviolent marijuana offenses, and create a grant program for small businesses entering the industry and communities that have been damaged by past drug enforcement actions. So while we're doing all that, and our attorney general's over here talking about exculpatory evidence, he's yet to address violent crime, and 9 people were shot in Montgomery. In Montgomery, where he lives, 9 people were shot in 12 hours.
So he needs to clean up his own city before he can start talking to anybody else.
Wow. Okay, so let's go on to the governor, and I was saving this one for you, Paul. Governor, so this was down here on your left. This is a tweet by the Alabama Department of Public Health. It says, when in doubt, it's always better to be safe than sorry. Let's normalize masking and ask our community. And there's a picture of an N95 mask. So the headline is, Governor Ivey doesn't agree with state health department message to normalize. So this is a quote from the governor's office. A seafood restaurant would serve Rocky Mountain oysters before there was a mask mandate in the state of Alabama. Normalizing masking, COVID restrictions, and the like are not anywhere in Governor Ivey's vocabulary. Alabamans have common sense and can choose what is best for them. She noted that the Alabama Department of Public Health is not under the governor's control. The State Board of Health is over.
It's the health department.
So they more likely to serve mountain oysters than they ought to put up with another mask mandate. I mean,
don't worry about the health department.
Stay classy, Alabama. Well, speaking of health, the Mobile Baykeepers challenge Alabama power plan to keep coal ash in America's Amazon. Baykeeper challenges Alabama power, leaving millions of tons of coal ash on the banks of the Alabama River is a disaster waiting to happen, says Cade Kistler at Mobile Baykeeper.
Good. Fantastic. That should happen.
So, all these fish advisory consumptions. So now there's a phone number you can call.
Oh, my God.
844-219-7475. And of course, there's also a map. But you call in and you tell them where you live and where you caught the fish, and they'll tell you where you can eat it or not. And
it's really sad what has happened in Mobile Bay, and relatively fast, because like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you catching shrimp right against the shore, catch nice big healthy fish off the pier and everything. But now you can't even see 1 foot in it. And again, I've said this before, nurses at Thomas, I've heard them say that kids come in there or people come in there from swimming all the time with little cuts and get an infection. And before you know it, they got a real problem. So before you go swimming in the bay, you may consider driving to the Gulf.
Yeah. What?
All
right. So here comes, you ready for all the bad news stories?
Oh God. What else?
Oh man, you know I have a plethora, right?
Right.
All right. So let's do this one.
High levels of phosphorus in groundwater near the Baldwin County Sewer System.
New tonight at 10, concerns still growing over the quality of one of Baldwin County's most popular bodies of water.
At Gulf Shores, residents fear leaks from a Baldwin County Sewer Service plant are impacting Little Lagoon, causing potentially harmful algae blooms. NBC 15's Corey Pippen is live in Gulf Shores tonight.
Corey, scientists have been studying the water there, and the results were not good.
Oh, Greg, Kim, that's right. Experts found toxic chemicals in groundwater near the sewer plant on Fort Morgan Road. They can't say for sure it's coming from the plant, but they do know it's going into the lagoon. Little Lagoon spans 10 miles in Gulf Shores and is cherished by residents and visitors. But its health has long been a concern as potentially dangerous algae growth in the body of water has increased. Tonight, experts unveiled details from a water quality study pointing at a potential source.
Anytime you grow a plant, you need both nitrogen and phosphorus. There's plenty of nitrogen in the lagoon, and adding phosphorus could be bad.
Dennis Hatfield, president of the Little Lagoon Preservation Society, held a meeting attended by dozens of other concerned locals as a hydrogeologist revealed his research showing high levels of phosphorus in groundwater near the Baldwin County Sewer System plant on Fort Morgan Road.
Times when I've seen anomalous concentrations of phosphorus in streams have been downstream from wastewater treatment plants.
Residents have long questioned whether the chemicals were seeping from the BCSS plant into nearby Little Lagoon. That compounded when BCSS recently asked the Alabama Department of Environmental Management to increase its wastewater capacity there due to growth in the area.
When the algae decays, it can cause dissolved oxygen problems. It can cause fish kills.
Cook and University of South Alabama professor Dr. Alex Beebe, who was hired by the Mobile Bay National Estuary Program to conduct the studies, can't say it's coming from the plant, but residents believe the evidence speaks for itself.
When I take my dog out or my cat goes in the litter box, it's kind of like that to me. It's a cat litter box, and it's draining right into a beautiful body of water.
Now, a spokesperson with the Baldwin County Sewer System told me strict protocols are in place, including a third-party testing company to make sure there are no leaks. I'm told ADEM is reviewing the situation right now, and the results of these studies will be submitted to them. Reporting live in Gulf Shores tonight.
What's the name, Harry, of that Little Lagoon? What?
Oh, it's the same old. So listen, I can't tell you how many years ago it was. 1998, the Little Lagoon, I had to go to a meeting with the Little Lagoon Preservation Society, and you know what they were raising hell about?
What?
They didn't want to have to hook on to the sewer line that we just ran past their house, which the septic tanks were the main cause of the problem 20 years ago. So now everybody's on sewer, and it turns out that the private sewer down the way. And remember remember the riddle of the stinks, like the 5th podcast we ever did, when they asked for that groundwater they quit releasing their effluent as groundwater. They started injecting it down into that kitty litter stuff or whatever. And so it tends to follow that would introduce phosphorus into the ground if they're not properly treating their wastewater. And, of course, ADEM, the only thing they test is the effluent. So how wouldn't ADEM have known? Well, because ADEM doesn't actually test it, they send it off to a third party who reports it to ADEM. Don't think that somebody with the state of Alabama with a white robe on and a hard hat is down there actually doing the testing.
Yeah, well, let's be sure that the citizens down there keep up their protests, because for sure, if they don't say anything, it'll get worse. And, you know, they say it's not leaking into the body of water and this and that, and da-da-da. We just got through talking about Fairhope like 10, 15 years ago. We just got through talking about that. And the reason the fish and everything are not there is because of the sewer stuff that's been discharged into there and the overflow. And Fairhope still has that problem with infrastructure. So, I mean, when everything gets full, they got to flush that whole system and get it back online again. I'm not saying they're pumping raw sewage or not, but what they are pumping is a contaminant enough to be a deterrent to fish and stuff like that.
Well, it's like what they're saying here. You get an algae bloom and it reduces the oxygen level in the water, and nothing. You know, why would you go into a room with no oxygen in it?
Right. So
the other thing that I wanted to talk just briefly about, I want to kill everybody with national politics, but the January 6th commission or committee, whatever it's called, had their little wing ding again this week. And I can just tell you, I thought that they were doing a good job up until this point, but all this monologuing by members of the commission is totally unnecessary. This thing right here is gold. I mean, I cannot believe that he's up there, you know, reading his speech, and oh no, I can't possibly say. I don't want to say that. I don't
want to say this. I don't want to say that.
It goes to show you that
Harry,
he knew.
You know, the one thing that's real
the
sensitive.
Whole time.
And the one thing that's real sensitive to people is that they don't want to believe that they were lied to, and that the big lie really was a big lie. But these hearings, the one thing people need to understand, first of all, you should watch it so you can understand what is going on. But secondly, these are most of these people are career Republicans that were testifying. You know, this is not a whole bunch of Democrats beating up on somebody. Anyway, my family is about to leave here, so they're motioning to me to wind it up, Harry.
All right, so
but they should be watching it.
Yeah, they should be. So the other thing we'll end where we began. Monkeypox. This was yesterday. Yep. We're getting 200 doses of the monkeypox vaccine when they declare a global pandemic.
Yeah, really.
We got our 200 doses. We're covered, son. Jeez.
So there's only 198 if you and I get one.
No kidding. And the other bad news is Jack Burrell's still the MPO chairman. I thought this was pretty good. There was a shooting.
No, wait a minute. Now, remember the MPO chairman that they started out on this bridge like 15 years ago. I think the first thing was $350 million. We are now at $3 billion, folks. $3 billion and a toll.
So, you're familiar. Are you aware that several reports came out this week critical of all 376 police officers that responded, except for the 3 guys with no SWAT training whatsoever who just happened to be border agents who grabbed a shield and a shotgun, who thought they were going into a room where someone had barricaded themselves in, had no idea there were going to be children laying everywhere dead, right? And the guy leaps from cover out of a closet and, you know, surprises them. They shoot and kill him. Those 3 guys. The rest of the people were standing around. Have you watched the videos?
No.
Okay, well, it's incredible. So anyway, there's this other shooting that happened in a mall. Was it Minnesota?
Oh, not sure.
Well, I can't remember either. Anyway, regardless of that detail, the detail that's important is this guy cuts loose with with a weapon and is randomly shooting people running for their lives in a mall, and this kid with a 9mm. I mean, I hate to call him Sergeant York, but anybody that can make a shot from 30 yards with a pistol that's dead nuts.
That's really, that's crazy.
So anyway, and he shoots him multiple times at that distance and kills him. 15 seconds from the time the shooting started until that guy was dead on the ground. So one good guy with a gun is worth more than 376 cops who do nothing. And I'll leave it there, Mr. Rip.
Okay. Everybody have a safe holiday and try to keep up on what's happening around you politically. Political corruption is costing us all.